The royal palace of Xuan'er hung suspended above the storm-racked clouds of Vale 7, its spires of living crystal humming with ancient energy, each tower carved not by tools but by the whispered wishes of generations of alien queens. Inside, the air shimmered with the scent of blooming night bloom lilies and the faint ozone tang of plasma conduits buried beneath marble floors that reflected the ceiling's artificial stars like a drowned galaxy. At the center of the grand atrium, where the light from 1,000 floating orbs pooled like liquid gold, stood Commander Tarn Vale, human, broad-shouldered, clad in the ill-fitting ceremonial armor of a guest prisoner, his dark hair cropped short, his eyes the color of storm-worn earth, utterly out of place among the emerald-skinned nobility whose hair cascaded in liquid silk, their limbs long and elegant, their voices resonating like wind through glass chimes. He had been brought here not as a diplomat, not as a warrior, but as a mistake, a survivor of a derelict Earth vessel that had drifted into Xuan'er's gravity well, a species the Xuan'theri had thought extinct, a creature of flesh and bone they called the Soft Ones. And now, because of a quirk of royal law, because the current queen, Marissa the Unyielding, had refused every suitor for 13 cycles and declared that only a being who could silence her rage would inherit her throne, Tarn had been dragged into the center of a political storm he never asked for. The queen's throne room was a cathedral of fury. Her throne, forged from the bones of fallen starships and lined with the pelts of extinct predators, pulsed with a slow, angry rhythm, matching the erratic heartbeat of the queen herself. Marissa was a vision of terrifying beauty, her skin a deep, iridescent green, like moss grown under a dying sun, her hair a wild mane of emerald filaments that shifted color with her moods, currently a violent violet streaked with black. Her eyes, large and slit-pupilled, burned with a cold, ancient fire that had turned suitors into ash, turned ambassadors into silence, turned entire diplomatic delegations into scattered bones buried beneath the palace gardens. She had crushed the claws of 3 princes from the KRWL Dominion with a flick of her wrist. She had turned the voice of the High Oracle of Vale 3 into a whispering wind that no one could understand. She had wept once, a single tear that melted through 3 layers of reinforced crystal, and since then, no one dared to speak unless spoken to. And yet, here Tarn stood, unarmed, unarmored in the true sense, trembling not from fear but from exhaustion, from the weight of being the last human in a galaxy that had forgotten them, and from the unbearable loneliness of being the only one who didn't see her as a monster. He had been brought before her on the 3rd day of his imprisonment, not for trial but for observation. The courtiers had whispered that he was a curiosity, a pet, a joke. They expected him to cower, to beg, to scream. Instead, he had sat quietly on the cold floor, his back against a pillar, humming a tune from his childhood, a lullaby his mother used to sing while fixing the engine of their old hover truck. He didn't know the words anymore, only the rhythm. And somehow, against all logic, against all alien biology, Marissa had stopped pacing. She had frozen mid-step, her hair dimming from violet to a dull moss green. She had tilted her head, as if listening to a song only her soul could hear. No one had ever done that. No one had ever heard her. Not the music of her rage, not the silence behind it. And so, for 7 nights, Tarn had been allowed to sit in the throne room, not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as a presence. He read old scrolls from Earth's libraries, translated by the palace's slow, mechanical scribes. He ate the strange, glowing fruits the courtiers left for him, though he never complained about the taste. He slept on the floor. He never looked at her with awe. He never looked at her with fear. He looked at her like she was just another tired soul in a broken world. And then, on the night of the eclipse of twin moons, when the palace lights dimmed and the stars above burned white and cold, Marissa did something no one had ever seen. She walked to him, not with the thunder of a queen, but with the quiet step of a child lost in a forest. She knelt, not bowed, not knelt as a subject, but knelt as one soul meeting another. Her fingers, long and tipped with translucent claws, reached out, not to strike, not to grasp, but to hover above his cheek. He didn't flinch. He didn't breathe. He looked up at her, his eyes tired, his face smudged with dust, and said, in the broken Xuan'theri he'd learned from the scribes, You're not angry. You're lonely. The silence that followed was so thick it cracked the crystal floor beneath them. A courtier fainted. A guard dropped his energy spear. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, slowly, the queen began to weep. Not the melting tear kind. Not the silent, devastating kind. But a deep, shuddering guttural sob that tore from her chest like a storm breaking free of its cage. Her hair flared into a blinding silver, then a molten gold, then a deep, pulsing crimson. Her claws dug into the stone. Her voice, when it came, was not the voice of a queen. It was the voice of a girl who had been alone for too long. "Human," she whispered, her lips trembling, her eyes wide and wet and terrifyingly alive. "I want you. I can't take it anymore." Tarn froze, not because he was afraid, not because he was stunned, but because he understood in that single moment the weight of what she had just said. Not "I choose you," not "I love you," not even "I need you," but "I want you," and "I can't take it anymore." 2 sentences, 2 admissions, 2 shattered walls. And they were not spoken to a warrior or a savior or a savior. They were spoken to a man who had nothing to offer but silence, and the quiet courage to sit beside her in it. The court erupted. Chaos, screaming, energy blades drawn. Royal guards surged forward, their weapons crackling, their faces twisted with horror. The High Chancellor, a towering figure with 3 eyes and a voice like grinding tectonic plates, roared for her to be restrained. The royal physicians rushed in with neural dampeners and sedative mist. The princesses, her daughters, all 7 of them, stood frozen at the edge of the chamber, their green faces pale, their hair dull with shock. One of them, the youngest, barely 100 cycles old, stepped forward, her voice trembling like a plucked string. "Mother, you cannot mean this. He is soft. He has no claws, no plasma core, no royal blood. He will die in 3 cycles. He will rot." Marissa did not look at her. She did not look at anyone. She only looked at Tarn. And then, with terrifying calm, she stood. She raised her hand, and the entire throne room went silent. Not because she used force, not because she summoned lightning, but because she simply stopped. The pulse of the throne ceased. The hum of the crystal towers stilled. The floating orbs dimmed to a single steady glow. The air lost its charge. The fear in the room did not vanish. It melted, like ice under a sun that had forgotten how to be cold. "I have ruled for 417 cycles," she said, her voice now soft, but carrying like a bell in a tomb. "I have slain kings. I have shattered alliances. I have made stars tremble. And in all that time, no one has ever looked at me and seen me. Not the queen, not the monster, not the heir, just me." She turned to the chancellor, her eyes glowing faintly amber. "You told me I must marry to secure the line. You told me I must breed with strength, with power, with blood. But what good is a throne if no one dares sit beside you? What good is a crown if no one dares touch it?" She stepped toward Tarn again, her bare feet leaving no prints on the stone. "He does not fear me. He does not worship me. He does not try to change me. He sits. He hums. He eats my food. He sleeps on my floor. And when I scream into the dark, he does not run. He waits." She reached out again, this time not to touch his face, but to take his hand. His fingers were calloused, warm, human. Hers were cool, smooth, scaled. When their skin met, the chamber flickered, not with energy, but with something deeper, something older. The crystal walls shimmered with faint, golden glyphs, ancient symbols of union, long forgotten, now glowing as if awakened by a forgotten prayer. The chancellor's voice cracked. "This is an abomination." Marissa smiled. It was the first time anyone had seen it. It was terrifying, beautiful, real. "Then let it be," she said. And with that, she pulled Tarn to his feet. The court recoiled. The guards hesitated. The princesses stared. And Tarn, the last human, the quiet man who had never asked for anything, found himself standing beside the most feared ruler in the galaxy. Her hand in his, her breath warm against his ear, whispering, "I have waited for you longer than you have lived." They did not speak for the next 3 days. No one dared interrupt them. Tarn was given a chamber. Not a prison, not a guest suite, but a room adjacent to the queen's, connected by a corridor lined with glowing vines that bloomed only when they walked together. He was given clothes, simple, woven from the silk of sky spiders, soft as mist, green as her hair. He was given food, strange, sweet fruits that made his tongue tingle, meats that shimmered like liquid metal, water that tasted of rain and memory. He was not asked to speak. He was not asked to perform. He was simply there. And Marissa? She began to change. Not in appearance, not in power, but in presence. She stopped pacing. She stopped smashing things. She started reading. She asked him to tell her stories, about earth, about forests, about oceans, about children laughing in the rain. She listened, her head tilted, her hair shifting slowly from crimson to soft jade. She asked him to teach her how to hum. He did. She hummed badly at first, off-key, her voice too deep, too resonant, but she tried. Every night, every morning, and slowly the palace began to heal. The crystal towers, once cold and brittle, began to glow warmer. The gardens, once dead and blackened from her tantrums, sprouted vines that curled around the statues of past queens, weaving them into living wreaths. Even the guards began to smile. One of them, a grizzled warrior named Zorik, who had served 3 queens and lost 3 sons to her wrath, began leaving small gifts outside Tarn's door. A carved stone of a bird, a vial of glowing pollen, a single feather from a sky whale. He never spoke. He just left them. And one day, Tarn left something in return. A small folded paper crane, made from the edge of an old Earth map. Zorik cried, and no one said a word. But the court noticed, and the princesses noticed, and the queen noticed that she no longer woke screaming. She woke quiet. She woke curious. She woke hoping. Then came the trial of the twin moons. It was not a battle, not a duel, not a contest of strength. It was a law older than the palace itself. When a queen chose a mate outside the royal bloodline, the galaxy demanded proof, not of power, not of lineage, but of connection. The trial required the chosen one to survive the gauntlet of echoes, a labyrinth beneath the palace, built from the memories of every queen who had ever ruled, each chamber reflecting the deepest fear of the one who entered. It was said that no outsider had ever survived, not because the trials were deadly, but because they broke the soul. Marissa announced it without hesitation. "I will enter with him." The court screamed. The princesses fell to their knees. The High Chancellor begged her to reconsider. She did not. She took Tarn's hand again, and they walked down into the dark. The gauntlet was not made of stone. It was made of feeling. The first chamber showed Tarn his home on earth, his mother's house, burning, his father's voice calling his name as the sky rained fire. He stood there, tears streaming, and whispered, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," and the fire vanished. The second chamber showed Marissa her first child, a daughter born still, her tiny body wrapped in the black silk of death. She fell to her knees, her hair turning to ash, her voice a broken whisper. "I should have held you longer," and the child's form dissolved into light. The third chamber showed them both together. Tarn, old and gray, lying in a bed, his hand weak in hers, his breath shallow. Marissa's eyes filled with tears. Tarn smiled. "It's okay," he whispered. "I had you." And the vision faded. The fourth chamber was empty, just a mirror, and in it they saw not themselves. They saw each other, not as queen and human, not as monster and savior, just 2 souls, alone, together. They stepped out of the gauntlet hand in hand. The chamber above them opened. The sky above the palace blazed with twin moons, one silver, one gold, their light merging into a single beam that poured through the crystal dome and settled over them like a blessing. The court fell silent. Then, one by one, the guards lowered their weapons. The princesses rose, and the High Chancellor, trembling, bowed, not to the queen, but to Tarn. And then, Slowly, the entire palace bowed. Not out of fear, out of awe, out of love. That night, Mrissa did not return to her throne. She took Tarn to the highest balcony, where the stars touched the edge of the world, and she sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, her hair glowing softly, like embers in the dark. "You know," she said, her voice quiet, "I used to think love was a weapon, that to be loved you had to be feared, that to be powerful you had to be alone." Tarn looked at her. He didn't speak. He just held her hand. She smiled. "I was wrong." He leaned his head against hers. "I know." They stayed like that for hours. The palace slept. The stars watched. And somewhere, deep beneath the crystal floors, the ancient glyphs pulsed once more, brighter than ever. But the story was not over, because the galaxy did not forget, and the Zyanthari did not forgive. The next morning, the first message arrived. Not by courier, not by signal, but by the sky itself. A single ship, massive and black as a dead star, descended from the void. It had no insignia, no markings, only a single word, burned into its hull in letters of molten obsidian. Reclaim. The Zyanthari Council of the Outer Realms had heard, and they were coming, not to celebrate, not to witness, but to punish. For the queen had broken the oldest law. She had chosen a soft one, and in their eyes that was not love. It was treason, and treason in the Zyanthari Code was not punished by exile. It was punished by extinction. The princesses gathered in the Hall of Whispers, their faces grim, their hair dark as storm clouds. "We must exile him," said the eldest, her voice cold as glacial ice, "before they come, before they burn us all." "He saved us," said the second, her eyes wet. "He made her human." "He made her weak," said the third. "She is our mother," whispered the youngest. They argued through the day, and at dusk, when the twin moons rose again, Mrissa stood before them, her hair now a calm, steady gold, her eyes clear, her voice steady. "I will not exile him." The room fell silent. Then, slowly, one by one, the princesses stepped forward, and one by one they knelt, not to her, to Tarn. And then, in unison, they spoke. "We will fight with you." Tarn looked at them. He looked at Mrissa. He looked at the palace. He looked at the sky. And for the first time in his life, he felt something he had thought lost. He felt needed, not as a curiosity, not as a savior, but as a man. And so, as the first starships of the Reclaim fleet breached the outer atmosphere, their engines screaming like dying gods, Tarn Vale, human, quiet, unassuming, the last of his kind, did something he had never done before. He picked up a weapon. Not a plasma rifle, not a blade of crystal, but a simple staff, carved from the heartwood of the palace's oldest tree, its surface glowing faintly with the same golden glyphs that had awakened beneath their feet. He held it in his hands, and he whispered, "I don't know how to fight for a throne." Mrissa took his hand again. She pressed her forehead to his. "I don't know how to love without fear." And together they stepped forward, not as queen and human, not as ruler and subject, but as two souls finally whole. And the stars above them burned brighter than ever. The fleet was coming. The galaxy was watching. And for the first time in centuries, the Zyanthari Palace did not tremble. It sang a song of quiet courage, of love that refused to be erased. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the palace, the ancient glyphs pulsed once more, not in warning, not in rage, but in hope. And the song grew louder, as if the stars themselves were learning how to sing. The black ship did not land. It simply hung in the sky, silent and impossibly vast, blotting out half the heavens like a wound in the fabric of night. From its underbelly, smaller craft, sleek and jagged as obsidian teeth, detached one by one, spiraling downward in perfect, terrifying synchrony. Their engines made no sound, yet the air itself trembled, vibrating with an oppressive gravity that made the palace crystals groan. Inside the war chamber, formerly a library, now hastily converted, Tarn stood over a hovering map of the palace's defenses. Mrissa paced beside him, her hair a deep cobalt now, flickering with bolts of electric gold. The 7 princesses surrounded them, their postures rigid, eyes sharp, no longer the skeptical daughters of a scorned queen but warriors forged in sudden necessity. The youngest, Silva, barely more than a girl by Zuanthari standards, clutched a plasma dagger that hummed with nervous energy. "They won't just destroy the palace," said the eldest, Vela, her voice flat and cold as orbital ice. "They'll erase it from the galactic archives, burn every record, every glyph, every memory, as if she never ruled." "They'll take him," whispered Silva, "dissect him, clone his cells, see if the soft ones can be weaponized." Marissa stopped pacing. "Not if I burn the sky first." Tarn looked up. "No." Everyone turned. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't commanding. But the quiet certainty in his voice held the room still. "We don't win by matching their violence," he said. "They expect a war. They expect us to rage, to fight, to prove their point that you're unstable, that your choice is madness." Marissa frowned. "Then what do we do?" Tarn's eyes drifted to the staff in his hand. It had begun to pulse with a gentle warmth the moment the black ship appeared, as if something within it recognized the threat. "We show them the truth." Before anyone could ask what that meant, alarms blared through the palace. The outer shields, layered fields of quantum distortion, flickered and failed. The first strike ship had fired not a weapon, but a sonic resonance beam, tuned to the exact frequency that unraveled Zuanthari biocrystal at the molecular level. Towers on the eastern wing cracked like glass, their humming silenced forever. Marissa roared, a sound that shattered every intact window in the chamber. Her claws extended, her eyes flared white. For a heartbeat, Tarn feared she would abandon everything and charge straight into the sky. But then she looked at him, and just like that, she was Marissa again. Not the fury of Zuanthar, but the woman who hummed off-key lullabies in the dark. "Tell me your plan, human," she said, her voice calm, but urgent. Tarn nodded. "The staff. It's not just wood. It's alive. It's tied to the palace's core, the heart seed, the same thing that powers the throne. The gauntlet, the glyphs." Silva gasped. "The heart seed is myth, a nursery tale." "It's real," Marissa said softly. "It sleeps in the deepest vault. No one has seen it in centuries." "It's waking," Tarn said, "because I'm connected to you, and you're connected to it. We're the key." He turned to the princesses. "I need you to lead the defense, not to kill but to delay. Draw them in. Lure them into the grand atrium. The heart seed's energy is strongest there." Vela sneered. "Delay with what?" "Our tears." Tarn met her gaze. "With trust." He handed her the staff. She flinched as if burned. But then, slowly, she took it. The moment her fingers closed around it, the wood glowed brighter, and the glyphs along its surface spread onto her skin, tracing lines up her forearm like emerald vines. "What is this?" she whispered. "A memory," Tarn said. "Your mother's memory. Of you as a child playing in the gardens. Of her holding you when your first wing molted. Of her singing you to sleep during the long silence." Vela's eyes widened. Tears welled. Her posture softened. "Now go," Tarn said gently. "Lead them. And remember, this isn't about strength. It's about feeling." As the princesses departed, clad in armor that shimmered with renewed light, Marissa pulled Tarn close. "What do I do?" "Stay with me," he said, "and love me, loudly, visibly, irrevocably." She kissed him then, not as a queen, but as a woman claiming her heart in front of the universe. Outside, battle began. The Reclaim Fleet's warriors, tall, armored in matte black carapace, their faces hidden behind emotionless masks, descended into the palace corridors with terrifying efficiency. But they found no resistance, no ambushes, only music. From hidden speakers, ancient lullabies played, songs Marissa had sung to her daughters. From the walls, holograms flickered, images of the queen laughing, planting flowers, crying over a lost pet. The warriors hesitated. Their movements slowed. One mask cracked, not from force but from internal conflict. Then the princesses appeared, not with blades drawn but with open hands. Vela stood at the center of the grand atrium, the staff held high, its light casting golden patterns across the fractured floor. "You came to judge a queen," she announced, her voice ringing through the chamber. "But you forgot. She is also a mother." One by one, the princesses stepped forward, each activating a memory glyph embedded in the palace's architecture. Scenes erupted in the air. Marissa weeping at her stillborn child's cradle. Marissa shielding her daughters during an assassination attempt, her own body riddled with wounds. Marissa sitting alone for years, refusing every suitor, not from pride, but because she refused to bring another life into a loveless union. The Reclaim warriors lowered their weapons. Then, from the rear, a new figure emerged, taller than the rest, his armor etched with crimson sigils. The High Inquisitor of the Outer Realms, Corzon, his face revealed. Scarred, weary, and unmistakably Zuantheri. "You think sentiment wins wars, child?" he snarled, his voice like grinding stones. "Love broke your mother. It made her weak. It made her choose him." He pointed a clawed finger at Tarn, who now stood with Marissa at the top of the atrium's grand staircase. Marissa stepped forward. "You speak of weakness, Corzon, yet you tremble at the sight of joy. You call love madness, yet you enforce obedience through fear. Who is truly broken?" Corzon's eyes flickered. "The law is clear. Soft ones are extinct for a reason. Their biology is unstable, their lifespans fleeting, their emotions chaotic. To bind our bloodline to such fragility is to doom us all." Tarn descended the stairs alone. Corzon laughed. "Ah, the pet speaks." Tarn stopped 10 paces away. "You're right. I'll die young. Maybe in 30 years. Maybe less. But in that time, I will love her every day. I will make her laugh. I will hold her when she dreams of the dead. And I will give her children who carry both our worlds in their bones. Children who know that strength isn't in claws or plasma cores, but in the courage to be soft." Silence. Then a miracle. The heart seed, deep below, pulsed. A wave of golden light erupted from the floor, not destructive, but revelatory. It washed over everyone, and for one blinding moment, every being in the atrium saw not with eyes, but with hearts. Corzon saw his own daughter, lost centuries ago in a failed coup, her tiny hand reaching for him as the palace collapsed. The warriors saw their mothers, their lovers, their forgotten dreams. Marissa saw Tarn, standing in a field of earth wheat, sunlight on his face, calling her name. And Tarn saw her, not as a queen, not as a warrior, but as a woman, kneeling by a river, washing her hair, singing softly to herself, finally at peace. When the light faded, Corzon was on his knees. Tears streamed down his face, carving paths through the ash on his cheeks. "I forgot," he whispered. "I forgot what it felt like, to want someone more than power." Marissa approached him. She didn't strike. She didn't gloat. She knelt and placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not too late." He looked up, broken. "The council will not accept this. They will send more. They will burn the system. Then let them come," she said. "And we will greet them not with weapons, but with songs." Corzon rose slowly. He turned to his warriors. "Stand down." They obeyed instantly. Then, to everyone's shock, he walked to Tarn and bowed deeply. "You have done what no general, no diplomat, no god could do," he said. "You have reminded us that we are not just rulers. We are beings who feel." But the moment of peace was short-lived. For as Corzon turned to leave, a hidden commotion erupted from the palace's lower vaults. A section of the floor exploded upward, and from the smoke emerged 5 figures. Hooded, cloaked in silver, moving with unnatural grace. Their skin was pale green, their hair white as bone, their eyes glowing a sickly yellow. "Sister," one of them hissed, pulling back her hood to reveal a face almost identical to Marissa's, but colder, sharper, twisted by centuries of bitterness. Marissa froze. "Larissa!" Gasps echoed through the chamber. Larissa, the banished twin. The one who had tried to poison the Heartseed during the Succession Wars. The one who believed the Zyanthari should purge all softness, all emotion, all alien influence, even other Zyanthari deemed impure. You chose a human, Larissa sneered, her voice laced with venom. You disgraced our blood. I loved, Marissa said simply. Love is rot, Larissa spat, and I've come to cleanse it. With a flick of her wrist, her followers unleashed a weapon unlike any the palace had seen. A bioresonance destabilizer, designed not to kill, but to unravel emotional bonds at the quantum level. The very air thickened with despair. Tarn felt his chest tighten, his memories of Marissa flickering like a dying light. No! Marissa screamed, but it was too late. Tarn collapsed, clutching his head, gasping. I can't remember why I love you. Marissa's heart shattered. Marissa laughed. Without his love, he is nothing. And without him, you are nothing. But then Silva stepped forward. She held Tarn's staff, now blazing like a star. You're wrong, she said, her voice shaking but clear. Love isn't just between two people. It's between a mother and her daughters. Between a palace and its queen. Between a species and its soul. She slammed the staff into the ground. The Heartseed responded. Not with light but with song. A harmonic frequency, pure and ancient, surged through the palace, shattering the destabilizer's field like glass. Tarn gasped as memory flooded back. Marissa's smile, her hand in his, her whisper in the dark. I want you. I can't take it anymore. He stood, and this time he held the staff himself. Marissa's eyes widened. Impossible. The Heartseed rejects outsiders. It doesn't, Tarn said, stepping toward her. It chooses hearts, not blood. With a roar, Marissa and Tarn charged together, not as queen and human, but as partners. The battle that followed was unlike any in Zyanthari history, not of destruction, but of restoration. With every strike of the staff, every word of love spoken aloud, the palace healed. Cracks sealed. Crystals brightened. The very air grew warmer. Marissa fought with fury, but her power was hollow, built on fear, not faith. And in the end, it was not a weapon that defeated her. It was forgiveness. Marissa disarmed her, pinned her to the ground, and instead of killing her, embraced her. I missed you, she whispered. Marissa struggled, then stilled. Tears, real, human-like tears, slid down her cheeks. I was so angry, she choked. I thought feeling made us weak. We are strongest when we feel together, Marissa said. Marissa surrendered. The silver cloaks laid down their arms. And as the twin moons rose once more, bathing the scarred but standing palace in silver and gold light, Corzon activated his ship's comm. This is Inquisitor Corzon of the Outer Realms, he broadcast across every Zyanthari channel. The Queen has not fallen. She has risen. And if any faction dares challenge her union with the last human, they will answer not to law, but to love. Silence followed. Then, across the galaxy, one by one, 1,000 ships dimmed their weapons. The war was over. But the story was not. For on the highest balcony, beneath the twin moons, Tarn took Marissa's hand and knelt. I may be human, he said, his voice quiet but sure. But my heart is Zyanthari now. She pulled him up and kissed him. And somewhere deep in the palace, the Heartseed pulsed once more. Not in warning, not in rage, but in joy. For the first time in centuries, the royal line would carry not just power, but compassion. Not just claws, but gentle hands. Not just a throne, but a home. And as the stars watched, silent and ancient, the last human and the Emerald Queen walked into their future. Not as legend, but as lovers. Together, finally, holy, they married under the twin moons, not in a grand ceremony of gold and steel, but in the quiet glow of the Heartseed's light, surrounded by the princesses, the former warriors who had once come to destroy them, and the palace itself. Its walls now alive with blooming vines that whispered their names when the wind blew. Tarn wore a tunic woven from sky silk and earth cotton, stitched with threads of gold and green. Marissa wore no crown, only her hair, loose and glowing like liquid emerald, cascading over her shoulders like a living river. They did not exchange rings. They exchanged hands, his warm, calloused, human. Hers cool, scaled, eternal, and together, they placed them upon the heart seed's core, where the ancient glyphs flared bright as a newborn star. The palace sang. The stars answered. And when the last note faded, the people of Ziwendar did not cheer. They wept, not from sorrow, from recognition. For the first time in centuries, they had seen love, not as power, not as politics, not as duty, but as something simple, quiet, and unbreakable. They had children, 3 of them. The first, a girl with green skin and eyes like twilight, who laughed so loudly the crystal towers chimed in response. The second, a boy whose hair shimmered silver when he was happy, and who could make flowers bloom just by humming. The youngest, a quiet child with Tarn's dark eyes and Marissa's stubborn smile, who once asked, "Why do you love him, Mama?" And Marissa had answered, "Because he made me want to be better, even when I didn't know I was broken." The palace became a sanctuary, not of conquest, but of connection. Earth songs were taught in the halls. Ziwantari lullabies echoed in human nurseries. The old guards became teachers. The princesses became ambassadors. Even Corzon, now an elder, wrote a book called The Softness That Saved Us, which became required reading across the galaxy. Tarn never learned to fly a starship. Marissa never learned to cook earth pasta. But they tried, and they laughed. And when he burned the first batch, she kissed his forehead and said, "At least you didn't set the kitchen on fire like you did the last time." He grinned. That was one time. She rolled her eyes and kissed him again. They grew old. Not quickly, not slowly, just together. His hair turned silver. Hers faded from emerald to soft moss green. The way autumn leaves hold the memory of summer. He still hummed. She still tried to sing along. And every night, before the stars blinked out, they sat on the balcony, hands clasped, watching the twin moons rise, silent, steady, eternal. On the day Tarn passed, he was not in a bed. He was in her arms, beneath the same tree where they had first sat, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, one last time. She did not scream. She did not rage. She whispered, "I loved you more than I ever thought possible." And he smiled, and closed his eyes. The palace fell still. For 3 days the heart seed did not glow. Then, on the 4th morning, a single shoot pushed through the stone where Tarn had knelt to propose. It grew fast, not into a tree, but into a vine thick, strong, glowing faintly gold, and it curled around Marissa's hand when she touched it. That night, she dreamed of him, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as himself, smiling, holding her hand, whispering, "I'm still here." When she woke, her hair had turned pure white, not from age, from peace. She lived another 100 years. She ruled not as a queen of war, but as a mother of worlds. She taught children how to love without fear. She held the hands of dying warriors and whispered, "You are not alone." She never remarried. She didn't need to, because every time the twin moons rose, the heart seed glowed. And every time the wind blew through the palace, the vines sang a tune she knew by heart. And when she passed at last in her sleep, her daughter placed her beside Tarn, not in separate tombs but in one, a single stone, carved with 2 names, and beneath them a single line, "They loved." And that was enough. The galaxy moved on. New empires rose. Old ones fell. But in the heart of Ziwendar, the palace still hummed. And if you ever stood beneath its crystal arches at dusk, when the twin moons kissed the horizon, you could still hear it. 2 voices, one human, one alien, humming, together, always.